Arthur. We need to talk. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do been to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact, Arthur Pendragon is currently the main villain of Four Knights of the Apocalypse, and I have 15 minutes to tell you how I feel about the current state of Arthur, for the better and for the worse. So let me start this 15-minute timer right now! Okay, so Arthur is an interesting antagonist, mainly because of the context of the original series. Now, notably, I know Nakaba said you don't have to read the original series, but like, you need to read the original series. I mean, not you don't need to, but you don't need to, but you kind of need to if you know what I'm talking about. And the main reason I find Arthur interesting as an antagonist is because he's actually a person, right? Like he's actually a dude, and like he can have reason and logic about his motivation that isn't just absolute destruction and or being just a will without will. So I really like Arthur as the main antagonist because I feel like there's still a fantastic story or more backstory or more time we can get with Arthur to justify his antagonism towards literally everybody, including other humans at this point. However, the one thing that I have an issue for with Arthur is that I cannot take him seriously as a threat. Not at all. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, Arthur's, I don't want to just flat out say bumminess, but I do kind of have to say bumminess as an antagonist. I don't even want to say it needs to be studied because it's just very, very bad. We are 210 chapters deep at the time of recording, and Arthur realistically hasn't felt like a serious threat the second Lance humbled him the first time. And unfortunately, it wasn't just the first time. A very, very, very incomplete Lance has very recently humbled him again. Even though, of course, this is going to not actually be Arthur, it is a portion of Arthur's power that gets completely vaporized by what is confirmed by Arthur himself, or at least Arthur's power, to not actually be his full strength. Yeah, it's looking very bad, very tragic for a certain King of Chaos, considering he literally takes damage from this, while I once again must mention he is within a realm of a realm of a realm. Like, he's legit out of the mortal realm in Camelot, then in another subsection realm of Camelot. And he's still taking damage from a range from a guy who's 18, hasn't gotten his wings yet, hasn't anywhere near his prime. Like, Lance is nowhere near his prime, and on top of that, isn't even able to wield all the power he has access to. So it's looking real rough for Arthur. And I hate to say it, it's not just looking real rough for Arthur, it's looking rough for Arthur's crew, too. Notably, as much as I love the Four Evils as individual characters, from Worldane to Pelgar to Ironside to Beltreep, they are still extensions of Arthur. Camelot itself is an extension of Arthur and his antagonism, and ultimately I can't take any of them seriously. And once again, that is heavily due to the fact that Lance is so overpowering, but unfortunately, as a way to sort of balance Lance narratively, Nappa went out of his way to have Lance explain how everyone here, if they had just played it smarter, essentially meaning our current four knights, including the three that seem fodder to Lance right now, could have actually handled these AMP4 evils. And the AMP4 evils probably weren't going to get any more amps considering they were reverted back to base. So, yeah. Outside of Beltreep, of course. Beltreep is the only exception, but we still have Lance. And you may be like, well, is this really a narrative problem on Arthur's end, or is it a problem on Lance's end? Is Lance too strong for the narrative? And notably, with the context of the latest chapter, I'd say no. Unfortunately, the onus is on Arthur to step up and be an actual proper antagonistic threat, considering he is at least currently our main villain. But of course, there's even hot debate around that. The reason this is the current state of Arthur is because we need to talk about his role as a hypothetical main antagonist, and how it is very, very, very likely to not actually be the case, with the, not necessarily resurgence, but consistent appearances and allusions to a certain Cath Paulug, the destructive nature of chaos, and even chaos itself. Notably, it takes Arthur's form, it wears Arthur like a skin sack, but ultimately, Arthur himself isn't really the villain. I've seen a lot of people say that just seems to be the point of the narrative, and I think that's boring. Notably, Arthur not even being his own character at this point, essentially just being a level, well, I was going to say a livable, but realistically living vessel of chaos is like, fine. And technically, I could just rewrite and backdraw all this as characterization for Chaos and not characterization for Arthur. But unfortunately, while it's wearing Arthur's face, I'm seeing Arthur, and Arthur isn't appearing as a threat. And you may be like, okay, Pencil Man, fine. Arthur's not appearing threatening. I was gonna say his malicious allies, but his allies are not appearing threatening. His whole kingdom doesn't appear threatening, and ultimately he's currently being solo stomped by one man who can't even use all of his power all at once. Fine then, Pencil Man. What would you do to make Arthur feel at least somewhat threatening? I'd make him live up to the hype. I would make him live up to the hype. Arthur at current is supposedly holding all of chaos. right? He is the king of chaos. He is the vessel for it. All that raw power is meant to be him. And then now, with the latest chapter, it is hardline confirmed. Well, not hardline confirmed. It's not explicitly stated just yet, but it's heavily implied that why Lance is so unbelievably powerful is because he absorbed the Lady of the Lake. And the lake is not even really a lake. It is magic force itself made visible by the sheer density of it. This lake is a massive storehouse of magic, one created by chaos itself. Lance is only as powerful as he is, presumably, and once again, who knows? Chapter 211 could drop and deconfirm all of what I'm saying in this video. That's fine. But Lance is only as powerful as he is because he's wielding something chaos itself created. Now, is it possible for something that is not infinite to create something that is infinite? I guess, because it's fiction, so of course. But at the same time, I believe chaos should probably scale above the lake it created. Heck, it's hard to argue that the lake even scales above certain deities at this point, just based on how it's interacting, and how it will go on to interact in Lance's interactions, who's wielding the lake. So, like, legitimately, Arthur should be more powerful than this. And that's why my honest opinion on the current state of Arthur and fixing him is giving this man a buff. And I'm not just talking about no little marginal buff, no little baby. I'm talking about something thick, juicy. I mean, we gotta make this guy feel threatening. We gotta make this guy feel threatening. Even if we go with the idea that Arthur himself is not the main antagonist, right? Which is an idea, unfortunately, I'm coming around to. Just he keeps getting bummed. He keeps getting sunned. He keeps getting beat up and bullied. And notably, it's hardline. Like I said many a time before, I could always somewhat gaslight myself. Just a little. I could always gaslight myself a little bit about the initial encounter with Lance. First things first, Chaos Arthur never really got super duper active. He flicked on the Black Skeletor for a second and then turned them off, and then kept getting bullied by Lance. So, you know, regular Chaos King based human Arthur. Fine, we can work with that. Something like. And also, he's not in Camelot. He wasn't wielding Excalibur. He probably was nowhere near his full strength. I could gaslight myself into that and be like, yeah, okay, all that's fine. This is Arthur. A piece of his power. In his own realm, mind you. And he's still getting sunned. Of course, he's not there himself to fight, but the fact that Lance was able to do this much to Arthur from a range, need I remind you, an entirely separate spatial dimension in this entirely separate spatial dimension, it's really, really bad. And once again, I must remind you, none of our heroes are at full strength yet. Not a singular one of them has actually reached their peak anywhere near it. Once again, whether or not you think Lance is going to end up growing wings, he doesn't even have a proper weapon. White Deer simply wasn't good enough. It was a sacred treasure tier weapon because it was made by Dubs, but it simply wasn't good enough. He still isn't unable to wield his current existing level of power. That's all hypothetical amps he could get. So he's at least going to get a sacred treasure tier buff. One that can actually handle his power. Uh-oh! Arthur's cooked. Obviously, our main cast and crew outside of that, such as Percy here, are also very far from their full potential. Naturally, considering he's still developing, just as an individual, and even seemingly understanding the better balance of his life spirit powers and his actual physical vessel. So, like, ultimately, he still has a long way to go. Then, of course, there's Mr. Twilight himself, the next Chaos in the flesh, who doesn't even understand what he realistically should about his own base biology. And he was already strong enough, supposedly, to go band for band with the four evils when they were amped by Chaos. And Gawain definitely seems to have a lower ceiling than others, but even then I highly doubt that, since I feel like she probably hasn't properly explored Dawn at all. She probably still has depth she hasn't reached, and of course there's the magic side of things where she could literally just pull out anything and everything. Our heroes are already too strong for our quote-unquote main antagonist, and our heroes aren't even at full strength. Do we see the problem here? And you may be like, okay, Pencil Man, maybe it isn't the fact that Arthur needs a buff, but maybe, just maybe, our main cast needs a nerf. And that is something I was at first willing to entertain for Lance. And exclusively for Lance. Mainly because it wouldn't make sense to nerf any of these three, who are, once again, I must emphasize, very far from their full potential. Like, nowhere near it. This guy especially. So, like, I can't nerf the main cast. I need to buff Arthur. Now you may be like, okay, man, cool story. Cool, nice idea. How are we going to buff Arthur, though, right? He's currently our main antagonist. He absorbed all of chaos. How on earth are we going to get this man super jacked, beefy, juicy, strong enough to actually feel like a main antagonist level threat, a very Demon King style threat? Even if he's not the real final antagonist, he's at least very high up there in the scale and very, very important, as he's the foundation for the entire narrative as we know it. Kind of like how the Demon King and Supreme Deity were in the original series. Simply put, let him understand chaos better. I think with chapter 210 sort of establishing that chaos created this entire infinite storehouse of magic by itself, one created by chaos itself, I am starting to believe more and more and more that it's not that Arthur doesn't have the power. He just doesn't know how to use it. Now, who would teach him this? I don't know. But at the same time, that's the development he kind of needs at this point. Arthur just needs to get better with chaos. And notably, it makes sense the guy's only had about 18 years to get used to becoming an actual deity. I also wouldn't be able to handle multiple levels of infinite world creating power all at once if I was him, but at the same time, he needs to do that. And notably, I'm so heavy on the idea that Arthur doesn't know what he's doing with chaos at this point, to the point where I think a further understanding of his own abilities would probably be a good way to buff him without feeling contradictive, is the fact that he's taking stuff from Britannia. This is a major plot point throughout the entire manga, that he's not just stealing people, but stealing actual chunks of land from Britannia. And now it's these four's job to stop him from doing that. Why does he need to steal land if Chaos is able to create, once again, I must emphasize, an entire infinite space filled with literal infinite raw magic force, and it just created this? It just popped it out by itself. It created the entire mortal realm in the first place. It created the deities, who all went on to make their own realms, which are debatable about their size, but we've seen the Demon King, or the Demon World, has starry night skies. We just haven't seen much of the Celestial Realm. But still, presumably it's a mirror, considering the Demon King and Supreme Deity were stated equals. Clearly, this multi-world creation feat is very, very impressive and very, very good for the general upscale, but in universe, I think Arthur needs a better understanding. And I think mainly the reason I'm so confident that he doesn't have full control on top of that is that his power is speaking for him. It's almost autonomous from him. He has split it off. I think Arthur needs to rein in his own strength in a way that he probably just hasn't yet. Because while the man is 34, he's only 34 and has kind of been stuck in a 16-year-old body ever since. He really hasn't been able to do anything or be pushed in the way that he needs to be pushed. Now, you may be like, okay, all right. So Arthur needs to better understand his power. He needs to get a further access of it. And realistically, he should have it. He just doesn't get it right now. How is he going to develop that way if there's not anyone to teach him? I think we need to see Arthur start moving himself. Unfortunately, with the way the four evils have been treated, and by treated, I mean like literally slurped up by this fragment of chaos and then dragged off into the unknown, presumably to be seen again, but they're probably not going to be threats anymore, especially since they all went back to their base states. I do believe it's time for Arthur to take on a much more active role in the narrative. And I do mean a hypothetical Arthur versus the Sins. Now, obviously, the Sins themselves seem to clear Arthur, quote-unquote, but Arthur has multiple advantages that he can essentially use the Sins as punching bags. Both, and I do mean, ironically enough, in both ways, where he can get beat on, and they can beat on him. Well, that's just both. That's literally the same thing. But he can beat on them, they can beat on him, and while they can use it as a training of sorts, Arthur can use it as a training of sorts to better understand his power, better manipulate it, and better get a control over it. So slowly but surely, he can feel like a real threat. Once again, I'm slowly but surely being gaslit on the idea of Arthur just not being the main antagonist, as much as I do not like that. I'm seeing the vision a little bit too much now. So with that being the case, if we're doing something like that, let Arthur at least feel like a Demon King tier threat. Let his army feel... Notably, it's hard to argue with his army, though. But notably, I'm not sure how we'd fix that now. He needs the four evils to be, like, anything remotely threatening. But even at the same time, there is chapter 207, which goes out of its way to set up a completely new group. As they say, as the four calamities journey through the land of chaos, at a gloomy precipice, they will cross swords with a fated group of knights hailing from a faraway realm. So... they're already in the land of chaos, which presumably would be Camelot, and then they're going to meet an entirely new antagonistic group. So, like, maybe you don't even need the army anymore. Maybe Arthur just needs to become Camelot, and not in the way that he already is Camelot, in the sense that he's maintaining it through his existence, presumably, but he needs to become Camelot as in the entire oppressive force. And I think that could realistically explain all the way back in the beginning of Part 2, the flash forward that Guinevere saw, where it was Arthur invading Leonis again. The knights were nowhere to be found, but all the Sins were standing there against them. You could have it so that Arthur himself is finally doing the fighting, finally working to better understand his strength and better evolve it so he can reach these supposed multiple layers of infinite level of power he has access to, thanks to chaos. So Arthur can actually feel like something dangerous. And honestly, not even just Arthur at this point, going with the idea that he's not the main antagonist, I want to be able to take our antagonists seriously at all, whether it be Arthur, whether it be Cass itself, whether it be a twisted version of Cath or I'm so close to a mix of all three. I want to feel some sort of threat from the antagonist again, and ultimately I don't want that to come at the expense of any of our main cast. I think our enemy cast just needs to get stronger. But of course, those are my thoughts based on what I've seen of Arthur, what's been established for him, what's been established by Chaos, and everything that correlates around him being a either major main antagonist or something very, very, very close. But that's what I think. Please let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please do me a favor and leave chaotic evolution. There we go. Leave chaotic evolution in the comment section down below. Like, thank you so much for watching. If you want to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that we keep posting, you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you have a Patreon below. Use what me for as well as one, get 1 no month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, now become a member of the channel for as well as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So, to conclude the live reactions, this user I have to review. I do reactions of all my videos, and if you become a $20 Patreon, $20 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, the link to my co-founder down below. You can drop 5 minutes of short video, 200 minutes long video, or any means at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Once again, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is that guy with the pencil, writing off. I'd like to give thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, Brandon Payne, J2MA, Guillaume, Buddha Ura, Alex Kenny, Enzo, Swift Strike, Super Flame 0, Yuki Ally, Azo2404, Striker Man, Aso8, Plant Crone, Grim, Black Sage, Marco222, Straw, Twisted, Ollie, The Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Magic, and CCC. Then, I'd like to give a thank you to our line art tier patrons: A+A, Kevin, Encarnacion, Dreadzoan, Sean, and Midnight Lord 21. Then, I'd like to give a thank you to our Ink tier members: Austin Wimberly Auchia, King RTX, and then Shrimpo the 4th Shrimp 06. Then, I'd like to give a thank you to our digital art tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. Then, I'd like to give a final thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Walkie Munoz and Walkie Munoz.